The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the participants and do not reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
BronxNet. Your voice, your views, your vision.
Coming up on this edition of Perspectives, new statistics show an overwhelming number of high school dropouts are African American or Hispanic. We'll analyze why the growing rate and what can be done about it. Plus, my guests are in studio. They're both finding ways to get our young men and future back on the right track to becoming good. And later, we'll tell you about a wonderful program that just might be the model to get the increase minorities need to get a college degree. That's all coming up next on Perspectives with yours truly, Darren Hyman.
What's on your mind?
Let 'em know.
What's on your mind?
Anything relevant to life, you bring it to the table. Whether you make a move solo or a movement with a stable. No fables, you speak on your decisions. Cause in the long run, it's your voice, your views, your vision. Keeping it real with many messages for you to know. This ain't radio, but DJ runs the show. Entertainment, he rocks it. Politics, he locks it. The host with the most would handle any topic. Don't forget to share your perspective with shines of light. Cause it might make a difference in someone else's life.
Make a difference.
What's your perspective?
Express what's in your heart and your mind. Share your perspective.
What's your perspective?
Hello again. Thank you for joining us for another edition of Perspectives. Remember, you too can share your perspective by sending us your comments at perspectives@bronxnet.org. And of course, if you want more information about this or any of our past shows, please visit our website at www.bronxnet.org/perspectives. Well, our first guest is no stranger to us here in the Bronx. He's the director of the Bronx Youth Empowerment Program and plays a huge role in shaping the lives of teens right here in the Bronx. Andy King, we welcome him to the show. And our guest also is the president of the Harlem Educational Activities Fund, also known as HEAF. She's done some remarkable work with her students, helping them to prepare to becoming productive citizens. And Dr. Danielle Moss-Lee is also here. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
As we were talking at the outset of the show, talking about the disparity in numbers when it comes to the educational system and the fact that it seems like it's harder for African Americans and Hispanics to graduate, and the number and the actual graduation rate. Any particular reason why we're seeing these numbers at a disproportionate level?
I mean, I think it has a lot to do with the fact that low educational outcomes are more often tied to low income. And blacks and Hispanics in this city, when you look at the unemployment rates, are much more likely to face lots of economic challenges that include housing, that include health care disparities, and a number of things that they're trying to overcome as they seek to educate their kids.
Mm-hmm. So when we talk, Andy, about the problems young people are facing, knowing that sometimes, you know, just to make it through the day is a struggle. And just to make it through the day, at home, go to class, got a lot of, you know, a lot of stuff you're dealing with. Talk to us about the challenges that you see them facing when it comes to education.
Well, when it comes to education, just with anything, the doctor mentioned about so many of the distractions that occur when you're growing up as a teenager. But if you're not able to come from a home that's stable, because it's just, a lot of our families are dysfunctional, whether you have one parent in a home or you're in the foster care system, young people face so many different challenges, and if it's not reinforced at home of how to be positive with discipline, of making education an importance to you, or just being able to know that I want to be a productive person so I stay on the right side of the law, I don't make bad decisions. If a young person can come to the realization there that this is how they want their life to be productive, then they'll do all that they can to make sure that whatever educational opportunities that are in their communities, that they search out and they identify and they respond to positively.
Dr. Danielle, but when we look at it, we are seeing that kids are dropping out of school. Not the fact they're just not graduating.
Right.
They're dropping out of school. Contributing factors?
I mean, I think that what you see in a lot of our communities is the least qualified teachers being placed in our schools, high levels of teacher turnover. I've had kids who may come in January, they're on their third algebra teacher for the year, so that lack of consistency definitely plays a part. And I think, you know, dropping out of high school is about, you know, recognizing within yourself that there's no connection between you and that institution. I think that the world that kids operate in has changed substantially. The cultural makeup and demographic of the country has changed substantially. I think that schools, for the most part, have failed to be responsive to that. I heard Dr. Adelaide Sanford was speaking recently, and one of the things she said is, you know, it starts in nursery school. If, you know, the only stories you hear are Hansel and Gretel, you know, the Three Bears, you know, Rumpelstiltskin, none of these people look like you or anybody in your community. So from a very early point in their education, we're not recognizing what they've brought to the table in this country. And I think that you have to really see yourself as successful before you can begin to act in ways that will guarantee your success.
And when you talk about that, I mean, it's important because when you have people that you know, the history component, and being that it is, you know, just coming with Black History Month, you get a lot of this history out there. But yet and still, when you have all this history out there, the one thing that can be said is you don't always find it in the schools. And what can we do in terms of getting that kind of integrated education? Because obviously that would be a contributing factor in helping kids when they see someone who looks like them or see a story other than the average stories that we're seeing. It could have a positive effect, right?
It definitely would have a positive effect. For me to walk into a classroom, and I've had this in conversations with the students, to walk into the classroom, to see someone there teaching me who can identify what I'm going through in my community and then help me understand what I've just gone through and been able to help me connect the dots of why I'm in the classroom, why I need to know about how to put a sentence together, why I need to know about how to do math. But if that person doesn't connect to me as a person, I cannot connect to them. Sometimes the learning is not even the first thing that's on my mind when I walk into that classroom. The sad thing, and I agree with the doctor, is that it has to start from when young people are really young. And one of the other things that I've learned is that some teachers have told me that they've been chastised or even fired or suspended when they decided to deviate from the curriculum that's out there, when they wanted to teach the kids a little bit something that's off the curriculum, but just to empower them as far as their own history, not just quote-unquote American history.
How do you counteract that, doctor?
I mean, I think that there's an important role for communities to play and for parents to play as well. I know that the Children's Defense Fund has put a lot of resources into developing a curriculum for freedom schools. And so I think, you know, lots of our churches and other community-based organizations need to be embracing that curriculum and making it available to our kids. The contributions of African Americans and Latinos in this country have not been episodic. And so to say, you know, you have Latino History Month and African American History Month, I think does us a disservice. But I think apart from the historical, you know, needs in terms of curriculum, I think we also need to look at how we deliver curriculum. I think that, you know, kids are growing up in a very multimedia society. And so the model classroom that puts an adult at the front of the room and basically has the kids listen to that person for the better part of an hour and, you know, write on a piece of paper is not something that kids who are texting, who are Facebooking, who are tweeting really can relate to. And so I think there's a radical, a need for a radical revisiting of how we engage in teaching and learning in a way that excites young people. And at the same time, they need to know that everything, you know, is not purely enjoyment. And I think you know, we need to build a sense of resiliency in our kids as well. You know, some things are going to be more entertaining than others, but, you know, you have to keep the end goal in mind.
Some people will get upset about this, but we do believe that education starts at home.
Yes, it does.
Parental involvement. One of the things that we're finding right now, particularly when you talk about the minority community, is I don't know if it's an apathy of parental involvement when it comes to attending PTA meetings, being involved with teachers, things of that nature. Do you find that the parental involvement, particularly in the minority community, lacks compared to you know, whites and other ethnic groups?
I mean, I think, you know, generationally, if you've not had a good experience in schools, then you're less likely to see them as welcoming institutions in your community, and you may be less likely to come out. I think that somehow or another we've developed a very middle-class ideal of what parent involvement looks like. You know, everybody's not got the time to bake cookies and come out to PTA meetings when they may have other kids at home, they may be working a late shift. And so I think we've kind of set up this middle-class suburban ideal of parent involvement, and everybody who doesn't fall within that purview isn't doing enough for their kids. But you don't have to physically come to the school to be an involved parent. You know, you can set limits on television, you can set limits on technology, you can set a bedtime in your house. You know, there are other ways that you can support education without physically being in the institutions. And I think on the other side, there are a lot of schools that don't want to see parents in the building, quite frankly.
Really?
And they're not, you know, they're not really designed and developed to be, you know, welcoming. You know, ask your average parent, do you feel like you could just drop in on your child's class at any moment to see kind of what's going on in that classroom? And they would probably tell you that that's against the rules. So, you know, and I think that that expectation definitely varies from community to community.
When you look at schools in the Bronx, you know, I fly just about every week, so I'm used to going through a metal detector, you know, every week. It really struck home for me, I think, when after the metal detectors were first, you know, put in the school system, because in some of these school systems, it looks like the metal detectors are almost more stringent than actually at the actual airports. What do you think? What do you feel stuff like, and understanding a need for safety? You got to be safe. But what do you think that does for a kid's psyche, having to go to school with metal detectors?
Well, my program operates out of a middle school. And it's really frustrating every day, every evening that you have to go in to feel like you're a criminal to go through a scanning. One of the concerns that the kids have expressed that sometimes during the morning that they have been late due to the fact that there are lines of people trying to get into the school because of the scanning machines. I tell a quick story. One of the principals told me that she was told by the Department of Education to put the scannings in because they wanted to trial it and test it and see how effective it'll work. She disagreed with it, but you know what? Once they were in, they couldn't have them taken out. So the way that they're implementing and putting scanning in, if you really want to save kids, the kids know who are the bad kids and who are not doing what. I say there comes a point in time that we as adults and those who say are committed to teaching and helping young people, that you need to actually really invest a little bit more of yourself in learning young people, because young people are not bad per se by nature. A lot of this behavior is taught and it could be corrected. And criminalizing me at 12 and 13, thinking that this is the norm, that every place I need to go, I got to take off my belt, I got to take off my shoes. You should see how some of these kids get undressed before they walk into, and now you want to tell me to go learn fractions after you just disrobed me. And treated me like I did something wrong before I didn't even do anything wrong. So this really has to be evaluated how it has an impact on learning, you know, if the real goal is teaching our kids.
What about the psyche? What do you feel?
I mean, I had a conversation with some of our young men a couple of years ago, and what we were hearing is, I'm 12 years old. When I go into a store, I get followed. You know, when I get onto an elevator with someone who doesn't look like me, they may clutch their purse. They may get off the elevator altogether. Then when I go to my school, I have to be scanned before I can begin my day of learning. And then we have to look at the media images of Black and Latino men and what's being portrayed in the news and what are we seeing. There are lots of good, hardworking men of color in this city. But that is not the first visualization that you get when you think, you know, black male, 5'10", 6'3", you know, dark hair. You know, we get a criminalized view of what it means to be black and Latino and male in this country. And so now you're mad at me because I haven't bought into the system and I'm not playing the game. When what you've been telling me from the time that I, you know, could really begin to perceive the world is that, you know, success is not part of the equation for me. You know, and so we're definitely sending a message, and it absolutely has a deep and abiding effect on how young people see themselves. You know, anybody who does success training will talk to you about visualization. What do you see for your future?
And speaking of future, I want to talk about that after I take a quick break. I want to talk about college and how we can get kids college bound. I know there's some work that's being done right now. I want you to stay with us. Coming back here on Perspectives, topic of conversation today, education, and particularly how it affects minority young men and also young women. Stay with us. Coming right back right after this. Welcome back to Perspectives, talking about the topic of education, the disproportionate number of minority men and even young women who are failing, dropping out of school, giving up at such an early age and at a higher rate. And so our guests in studio are Dr. Danielle Moss-Lee and Andy King, who are here with us. And Dr. Danielle Moss-Lee is the president of the Harlem Educational Activities Fund, better known as HEAF. And never got a chance to really get you to explain a little bit about HEAF. Tell us about it.
Sure. So HEAF is a college success program. We identify young people from New York City's public schools as middle schoolers and begin to work with them academically and socially to develop a college-going culture and expectation for themselves and also their families. And then we stay with those kids until they actually graduate from college with a degree.
Beautiful. So how do you feel that that impacts the life of a young person educationally?
I mean, when I hear our alumni who are now professionals talk about what that experience was like, it's life-changing. It's not a drop-in after-school program. It's really a 10-year commitment to really help young people develop the academic skills that they're going to need, a sense of intellectual curiosity that they're going to need, and also a sense of you don't give up. You know, you may hate your roommate when you get there. You know, you may have a guidance counselor who doesn't support your college aspirations. Your financial aid package may need to be renegotiated. So we're picking up the pieces on a number of different levels.
And you're celebrating 20 years?
We are. We are.
And so when you talk about 20 years of working with kids, that's actually following them through the whole educational system. We talked about the fact that it actually, you know, it does something in the life of a young person. Andy, you work with youth and you do some things that are, you know, extracurricular, if you will, but yet and still there's a sense of involvement throughout these, you know, very, very trying years. What does it mean to have somebody actually active in the teenage life of a young person? Because sometimes that's where we're dropping the ball, and many times that's where we're dropping the ball. Teenager, go ahead, do what you got to do. All right, just start to smell yourself. But you pretty much stay with it.
Well, yeah, you know, we spoke off break. You know, I talked about speaking at a high school and then speaking at a elementary school, and the difference that I saw was that at the elementary school, 60 parents in the auditorium, high school, 3 parents. The problem there is that our society forgets that children under 12 are dependent on their parents. But after they turn 13, that's when the children really need their parents to be around to help them navigate through peer pressure, navigate through crime, navigate through just learning how to deal with themselves. And if they're able to help them navigate through it, they're able to make better decisions when it comes to going to college. If you come from a household that promotes, talks about education, how to be productive, how to stay on the right side of the law, you tend to not to make the errors that will allow you to violate that because that's your makeup. But young people who don't have that connection or have that support structure, if they're not strong enough within themselves to have that discipline, then they'll end up not being able to be a part of a program such as Doctors and doing the right thing. So I applaud you for the work that you do. Continue to, because our brothers, we definitely need it. We definitely need it.
How do you go about making kids college bound? Because, you know, it's a process. The parents dread it because they feel, number one, the financial side of it, and then 2, you've got the students themselves who sometimes are challenged because you've been through an elementary education. Now you've gone on to the high school ranks, and it's like, ooh, here's this, you know, another level of secondary education, and you know, there's a lot of fear that goes on in kids. But how do you make them college bound? I
mean, part of it is academic. So obviously, we're doing a lot of enrichment in English language arts, math, and science. But we're going about that in creative ways. So if you're taking a writing class at HEAF, you'll probably be taking a mystery writing class. If you're interested in science, you know, we have a Harlem CSI class that we develop so that you're doing actual experiments and really problem solving and developing those tools that you'll need in higher education. When you come to our floor, there are college banners all over the place that represent real schools where we either have had students attend or have had students visit. We post the acceptance letters of our students as they begin to matriculate off to college. And many times I've heard an 8th grader say, you know, I can't wait until it's my turn to have my letter up on the wall. The other thing is that we start doing college visits as you know, as young as 6th grade. I think a lot of times folks don't get why we would start that early, But I know for myself and my husband, when my daughter, was an infant, we were fighting over whose college T-shirt she was going to wear. And so that's all messaging. It's subtle, but it's messaging. Taking your kids back to an alumni weekend event is messaging. Taking them on a walking tour of this institution is slowly building a message. When we have our college students come back in January, they run their own college fair. So it's not like you're going to a huge gym in a public institution where lots of strangers are talking to you about the different colleges and universities that they represent. These are kids from your neighborhood that you saw in this program wearing their college T-shirts, telling you, come on, you can do this too, this is what it's going to take. And so I think demystifying college, talking in real ways with kids about the fact that, you may end up on a campus where people don't look like you and they may want to touch your hair. And it's okay to say no. You may have a conflict with a professor that you can't resolve on your own. Feel free to go to the dean's office. So helping them to really figure out how to navigate systems, I think is really important. And then because we stay with the kids while they're in college, whether it's, helping them with transfers, renegotiating financial aid packages, helping them fill out applications for internships, there's still a sense of connectedness. And so the real celebration for us is actually getting a college degree. Lots of people go off to college. Only 35% of Black and Latinos who go will actually finish. That number for us is 95%. Wow. But I think, a strong expectation that's coupled with real tools and skills so that they're ready definitely makes a difference.
That E word that we've talked about before, exposure. How much of a difference does that make when it comes to making a kid, young person, college bound, and even let's step it out a step further, career bound?
I think exposure allows them to think outside of the little box that they live in. If you only know 216th Street, that's where you think the sky's, that's the ceiling. But if you get to experience, I heard her mention earlier about trips to California or Africa. We've taken kids to D.C., Washington, Florida. I mean, we've exposed them outside of their communities. So it gives them another educational base to refer to when they start selecting, well, I want to do something. If all I know is this, then I'm limited in my thinking. But as we expand the thinking, the dreams are possible. And that's what we want to be able to do, offer kids dreams so they can dream opportunities. You and I, all of us, will one day won't be able to carry that torch, and it's going to be up to them. Are they going to be ready? Are the high schools preparing them to be ready? And I don't want to change it, but that was one of the conversations that when we send our young people to college and you ask why some of our young people may have not succeeded or gone the whole course, well, they weren't prepared before they walked in the door. And we need to make sure that we do a sound job in preparing young people when we send them off to college, that they'll be able to endure. Thank you again.
Talk to us about how you can be, who is the program available to? Because you might have someone out there saying, listen, this is something I want my child to be a part of. Who's eligible? So
we are looking to identify middle school students who attend public middle schools, mostly from the Bronx, and Washington Heights and Harlem is where our kids come from. You need to be on grade level so that you're reading at least at your current grade level. Our focus is really on middle performing students who have the potential to become high performing students. I think that a lot of the city's resources go to the lowest performing students, and a lot of the city's resources are focused on the gifted and talented segment of kids. As a former teacher in the Bronx, I can tell you there's nothing more frustrating than a C student who, with an extra kick, could be an A student if they had that level of support.
Is there a sense, and even in hearing that, is there a sense of abandonment sometimes amongst educational institutions, particularly teachers, when you have that C student, not to be so driven to push that student from being a C student to an A student and just say, listen, you know what, gave it to you, didn't want to do it, here it is, as opposed to really giving that, that swift kick, like, you are going to do this, you are going to, is there that kind of, do you sense that sometimes amongst teachers?
I definitely think so. I think that we have a lot of, B students who, nobody's saying to them, take the test for Bronx Science. It's just like, oh, I didn't even know that was on your radar. But we should be taking responsibility for how our kids do. And I think a lot of how the educational conversation has been set up so far is to really say, you know, what the kids are or are not doing. And it's up to us as adults to really be creative and put on our thinking caps and to partner with young people in terms of developing experiences that will motivate them. You know, our kids get to help us hire the staff that work in this organization. That is incredibly empowering. Our kids will rate their teachers at the end of each class. And if there is somebody who didn't cut the mustard, I will not rehire them. That's real power, and the kids respond to that. You know, we have the luxury, obviously, because we're not a school, of really teaching things that the kids are interested in and that excite them. So the high school students this semester wanted to take a law and psychology class. Really? I was like, why law and psychology? It's like, well, it seems sometimes when you watch, you know, a courtroom drama unfold, like there are a lot of mind games going on. So we're wondering, like, how much is psychology infused into the law to kind of get the information that you need from a witness or, you know, to interrogate a suspect. And, you know, so we found someone who was qualified to offer that class. And so the kids are reading and they're excited, they're engaged, because they have a say. And I think that's one of the most important lessons that I hope people will take from the work that I'm doing. This is a partnership. You know, you can't make somebody be anything.
Right.
You know, I'm sure all of us have at least one grown person in our life. You know, if we could just, you know, snap our fingers and get them to change their behavior, we'd be really excited. But this is a partnership, and we really need to engage young people as partners.
And before we wrap up, tell a little bit about your program, if we can, and how people can be a part.
Well, the Bronx Youth Empowerment Program is a program for teens from the ages 13 to 21 years of age. Bottom line is building mind, body, and community. Anybody would love to be a part of this program that helps young people become productive adults. You can reach us at 718-515-0822 or email us at BronxYep, Y-E-P, BronxYEP at gmail.com. And we're on Facebook. So if you get a chance to go to Facebook, you see some of the dynamic things that these young people have experienced.
All righty. And Dr. Danielle Mosley, where can people reach you at?
So definitely check us out on the web at www.heafinfrank.org. Our telephone number is 212-663-9732. We're also on the web, on Facebook and Twitter, so look for HEAF.
All righty. Thank you so much, both of you guys, for coming and sharing with us. And we appreciate the work that you guys are doing. Continue up the great work, because it's much needed in our community and definitely in our society. Well, that about wraps it up for another edition of us here on Perspectives. We thank you for watching, and we encourage you to check Perspectives every Tuesday night live out, and you'll be able to see a brand new, fresh episode of Perspectives. We encourage you to check us out throughout the course of the week. And we, too, guess what, are on the World Wide Web, www.bronxnet.org. Also, Facebook. Just go ahead and Facebook us, and I also have a personal Facebook page, Darren Jaime. You can check us out there, and we'll continue to let you know what's happening here and on the show. But for all of us here on the set of Perspectives, we thank you for watching, and until the next time we meet, stay safe and share your perspective with somebody else, because it just might make a difference in their life.